Rising controversy on the Kerry-Lugar bill, many in Pakistan believe that it sparked the tension that could destabilize the system. Today in our studios we have the US Ambassador, Patterson. Let's have a talk and get analysis from her. Madam Ambassador, a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Kmran. Pleasure to be on your show.
Pakistan Army has yesterday stated, I quote, serious concerns on some of the clauses of the bill, the Kerry-Lugar bill. They believe that it would affect the national security. My question to you is, why a US bill is believed by the Army a security risk for Pakistan?
Well, let me sort of step back and try and explain what the Kerry-Lugar bill is, because I think it represents, in its most fundamental sense, a long-term commitment to Pakistan. We know that our relationship has seemed to be transactional at times, and there's no better friend of Pakistan than John Kerry and Vice President Biden, who was the original sponsor of the bill. And they envision this bill as a long-term commitment to the people of Pakistan. It's $7.5 billion over 5 years, with an option for renewal, so $15 billion that will go into issues like health and education, governance, agriculture. But we know there are legitimate concerns about the bill. And we're confident that when we sit down and explain it more carefully, we can overcome some of these concerns.
You're going to sit down with the military of Pakistan?
We talk to the military all the time. We have excellent relations with the Pakistani military. And one of the reasons I think that we're disturbed by this, and certainly we take their concerns very, very seriously, is we do have excellent relations with the Pakistani military.
But the question again is that after this deep concern, you're telling me that you're going to take military on board, you will meet with them?
We meet with them all the time.
But after this you will meet as well?
Yes, of course we'll meet with them. There's not a day that goes by that somebody in the American embassy doesn't meet with them.
But you haven't met it yet since they have passed this yesterday?
No, we haven't, because that came out last night. But we'd heard their concerns before. Again, we have a lot of contact with them. They talk to us. Again, some of them are we understand.
But, Madam Ambassador, the most important thing is, my question stands there, why the military of Pakistan thinks some of the clauses of this bill as against the national security of Pakistan, which you're probably not considering before you put this bill into Senate.
Well, we know that they think that, but again, I'm convinced that if we sit down and talk to the military and members of civil society and the politicians, we can overcome some of these concerns. We need a dialogue. Obviously, we haven't had a sufficient dialogue about this bill. We haven't done a good enough job of getting out the provisions in the bill that really are enormously beneficial to the people of Pakistan. But again, these are sort of short-term issues, I think. The United States is trying to convey a long-term commitment to the people of Pakistan through this bill. Senator Kerry will be here next week. He'll be talking to the politicians, to the military, and everybody else involved.
Was it a scheduled visit, or is it just because this hype is created in Pakistan?
No, it's been scheduled for months.
For months, okay.
Yeah.
Right. When you say that you need to make military understand, but military would probably also ask you, and the Pakistani public is also asking you, when you put this clause here in section 203, ceasing support, including by any elements within the Pakistan military or its intelligence agency to extremist and terrorist groups, are you assuming here and implying here that, you're actually not assuming, you're writing in the bill, that Pakistan's military or parts of it, they are sponsoring terrorism?
Of course not. Again, my military, the U.S. military, is very admiring of what the Pakistani military has achieved. We have extremely good military-to-military relationships among a group of professionals. So we're not implying that at all. This is a requirement. This is a requirement for a report or an assessment. I think the word is, or a report. Certification. Basically talking to ourselves within the U.S. government. But again, let me come back to the main point. This bill is for the long-term commitment to the Pakistani people, and it's not about money. It's really not about money. It's about a long-term relationship. We're trying to have a broader, holistic, more strategic relationship with the Pakistani people.
Well, it's not all about money. I buy this argument. People understand this argument. But the question stands, is this the perception of U.S. Senate that Pakistan's military is involved in sponsoring terrorism?
No, it's not the perception.
Seizing support.
It's not the perception. We know this has perhaps been an issue at some point, of course, or it would not be there. There's a position of concern among some members. And again, our legislative process works that you have to get a bill through Congress. So it tends to get sometime to what I would call the lowest common denominator, where people at the last minute, the sponsors say, we're eager to get this bill through, we're eager to show our commitment to Pakistan. So sometimes elements get in the bill that on reflection would better not be there.
Do you also assume, or do you also think, or the U.S. Senate thinks, or the lawmakers, that the ISI chief and the military chief, they are aware of those elements who have been allegedly probably involved in this sponsoring terrorism?
Again, we talk to the military leaders and the ISI chief all the time.
What do they say?
And well, that's an issue. Obviously, we do not usually go out and convey our diplomatic conversation. But the ISI chief just spent a week in Washington. He met with every high-level individual in Washington, from the head of the CIA to the National Security Advisor to Ambassador Holbrooke. Again, we have a very close relationship with both your military and your intelligence services. So we convey our concerns directly to them. We don't need to convey them through a bill.
And
we work with them very closely across an entire range of important issues for both Pakistan and the United States.
So you have conveyed these concerns even before this bill about the ISI's involvement in terrorism?
We discuss what's going on in Pakistan, we discuss what's going on in Afghanistan, we discuss what's going on in other parts of the world. Again, we have a very productive relationship. This is seen as hostility, and believe me, it's not intended as hostility. We have great admiration for people like General Pasha, for people like General Kiani, and for the foot soldiers that are involved in fighting and dying in places like Swan.
But they're also involved in sponsoring terrorism.
The bill does not say that they're
Seizing
involved.
support means what, madam?
They're already taking steps. They have taken a number of steps to seize support for terrorists. And of course, a lot of this territory is ungoverned. A lot of the area around Peshawar is ungoverned. A lot of the area in North and South Waziristan is virtually ungoverned. These are issues that the United States Congress and the United States administration are going to deal with among themselves. Pakistanis should see the larger picture, and again, I'm confident that we can explain this to people. Obviously, we've done an inadequate job so far, but I'm confident that we can explain to Pakistanis what this bill actually means.
Was military of Pakistan aware of, before you put this bill into Senate, that these are going to be the clauses?
No, and tell you the truth, people in the embassy weren't aware either.
Right, so it was a shock for them.
Well, it wasn't a shock. I mean, frankly...
They say the security risk.
But I think what aggravates the situation here, and this is obviously something we should listen to carefully, is our history is so complicated that when people read stuff like that in a bill, they read much more into it than frankly, other countries do, or frankly, the people who wrote it, or frankly, the people who work on it. So it's a question not just of what the bill says, but the historic context of the bill, which leads to misunderstandings on both sides.
Right. My last question on this very particular clause. Right. Are you optimistic that after putting this clause into it, that seizing support, the intelligence officers of Pakistan or the military, the ongoing support for terrorism from the side of intelligence agencies would cease?
Well, this bill will have all we have to do in the U.S. government, and that's all that this boils down to, is we have to write a report or a certification or assessment. The words are used interchangeably in the bill. Again, we have excellent relations with the Pakistani military and intelligence services, as well as a whole range of ministries, and we have constant discussions about what's going on in Pakistan and elsewhere. Will it cease? We don't think there is an issue right now. We think there are enormous issues of law and order in Pakistan, of control of territory.
Can I ask you one thing?
Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You understand English, I understand English, people understand English. When you put seizing support, this means what?
I'm trying to go back to what we have, an issue we have here in Pakistan that we discuss with your government all the time. And it's not seizing support for terrorist elements. Do you really think, because I don't think most people do, and certainly most Americans don't, that ISI is out there supporting these terrorists? Do you think ISI and the Pakistani military are crazy? They don't want to feed these terrorist elements within Pakistan, and we don't think so either.
So why this clause here?
Because there may be people who don't understand that. This may have been an issue
in the U.S. Senate.
Well, in the U.S. Congress, this may have been an issue in the past. Obviously, and we'll write a report, and we will take care of this issue. Again, I am confident that when we sit down and talk to people, we can explain the elements of this bill.
I teach U.S. Constitution to university, and I know about the U.S. Constitution probably not as much as you, but the U.S. bill cannot be passed without reflection. It is a democracy. It has to be debated. It has to be taken in serious consideration. You are telling me that the US Senate, many of the elements, many of the senators, they were not aware of it and they've just put this clause into it?
I don't know. Of course, the authors and the